I'm Clive James, founder and chairman of ISAAA, which I founded about 20 years ago. I've also had the privilege of working with the Nobel Peace Laureate Norman Borlaug, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 for saving 1 billion people from hunger in Asia. ISAAA is a not-for-profit organization, and there are two major missions. One is to share knowledge on biotechnology, particularly biotech crops. And we share this knowledge with the philosophy that we share it freely, but we respect the rights of others to make decisions based on that knowledge. So we are engaged in knowledge-based decision-making. The major mission, the goal of ISAAA, is to alleviate poverty and hunger in developing countries through the use of biotechnology. The center has three loci. The first is in Cornell University in the US. The second is in Africa, in Kenya. And the third is in the Philippines. And this is the operational center. There are many nodes around the world which facilitate the sharing of knowledge, the most important of which is in India. It's noteworthy that the two major donors who have provided the entire funds for the 2008 report are two philanthropic organizations from Europe. The first is Ibercaja, the philanthropic arm of a bank in Spain, which is located near where, in fact, they grow biotech maize in Zaragoza. The second is Fondazione Bussolera Branca, who feel that it's very important to share knowledge freely on biotech crops to facilitate a better understanding and decision-making. There are three groups of institutions that fund ISAAA. The first and foremost are the philanthropic foundations. Foundations like the Rockefeller Foundation, who of course were instrumental in funding the green revolution of wheat and rice in the 1960s. The second group comprise bilateral agencies, the traditional agencies that are involved in helping developing countries. USAID from the US, IDRC from Canada, GTZ from Germany. And the third group, which makes ISAAA different, is that we also have a contribution from the private sector, companies that develop the technology. In addition to providing modest financial support, they provide technology. They donate technology, which has cost not millions, but billions to develop. This is a very important role, that you get private and public working together towards mutually important objectives. The major findings of the 2008 ISAAA report was on many fronts. Three major areas. The number of countries increased to 25. And very importantly, two of those three countries were in Africa. Up until now, we've only had South Africa on the continent of Africa. But this year we've seen Burkina Faso plant BT cotton in West Africa, and in North Africa, BT maize has been used by Egypt for the first time. Parallel with the increase in number of countries, we've seen an increase in the number of farmers that have used this technology in 2008. An increase of 1.3 million, taking the total to 13.3 million. And remarkably, 90% of that 13.3 million, or 12.3 million, are resource-poor farmers in developing countries who represent some of the poorest people in the world. We've also seen an increase in area, an increase of 9.4% from 114 million to 125 million hectares. Or, measured in a different way, we have achieved 166 million trait hectares. That is a growth rate of 15%. So we've seen continuing growth, increases in the number of countries, in area and in terms of number of farmers. And we've also seen a new biotech crop, Roundup Ready sugar beet in the US, with an unprecedented 59% adoption in the first year. The demand for this product is so high that in fact they expect a 90% adoption in 2009, only the second year of cultivation. There is one statistic that is very important here, in that in the 12-year period, 1996 to 2007, biotech crops have contributed an increase of 141 million tons. The value of increased product at the farmer level is equivalent to 44 billion. 44% of that is due to higher yields, so you're increasing supply, and coincidentally, you are decreasing the cost of production. Increasing supply on the one hand, and bringing down the cost of production allows you to make a very significant contribution to more affordable foods. And that is particularly important for the poor people who spend 80 to 90% of their total income on food. The challenge with global warming is that we will see more rapid changes in weather. For example, droughts will become more frequent and much more severe, and they will happen much faster. So what you need is a technology that can deliver an improved product much faster. And that's exactly what biotechnology can do. Through tissue culture, through using special biotech applications in conjunction with biotech crops, you'll be able to develop improved varieties maybe in half the time. The other important aspect is that biotech crops can sequester, can fix CO2. And in 2007 alone, biotech crops were able to fix 14 billion kilograms of CO2. That is equivalent to taking 6.3 million cars off the road. That was in 2007. The potential for the future is enormous. What we see in 2008 is that 12.3 million subsistence, resource-poor farmers are already benefiting from biotech crops. There are 7.1 million small BT cotton farmers in China, another 5 million in India using BT cotton, 1/3 in the Philippines using BT maize, thousands in South Africa and the other countries. What biotech crops has done is to increase the income of the poorest people in the world in a very significant way. And I think it's important to point out that when you look at poverty, poverty today is a rural phenomenon. 50% of the world's poor are subsistence farmers. Another 20% are the landless rural that are completely dependent on agriculture. So 70% of the world's poor are rooted in agriculture. This to some may be a problem. We look at it as an opportunity, because if you can use technology to alleviate poverty, this is the most efficient way that you can do it. If we take rice as the next biotech crop, the major one to be released, the potential is enormous. There are 250 million rice households in Asia, with a population of 1 billion people if we assume an average of 4 per family. When biotech rice comes on stream, and China already has developed a product, this has the potential to benefit 1 billion people who are living in rice households. Biotechnology has many roles to play in terms of sustainability. One of the big benefits to date is that it has decreased the application of pesticides on crops. For example, in the 12-year period, 1996 to 2007, we have saved 360,000 metric tons of pesticides. That's good for the environment, good for producers, small producers who actually spray the pesticides onto crops. You've reduced exposure. There are ways in which You can contribute to sustainability through alleviation of poverty, through conserving water. Water, in terms of a constraint, is the biggest constraint to productivity globally. On the 1.5 billion hectares of cropland today, drought is probably a constraint in at least 2/3. We glibly say that water is the staff of life. It will become reality in the next decade. Agriculture uses 70% of the total fresh water in the world. The figure for the developing countries is 86%. Using water in the way that we do at this time is not sustainable in the future, when we have 9.2 billion people on this globe in 2050. The good news is that drought-tolerant maize will become available in the US in 2012 or earlier. Even more important, it will be available in sub-Saharan Africa by 2017. Maize is the staple for 300 million people in Africa. Here is a technology that will demonstrably increase productivity on the lands planted with maize. This, to our mind, will be the most important trait. If you look back at the annals of history, drought has been the big killer in the past in Africa. We look at Kenya today with 10 billion people short of food. The reason? Drought. So this trait in crops like maize, wheat, rice will be absolutely key. And the good news is that we don't have to wait a long time. It'll be available in 2 years. Yes, I believe that the question that we have asked of biotechnology and the question that society has asked of this society over the last 12 years is whether, in fact, there is a risk associated with this. Is there a risk in terms of food safety? Is there a risk in terms of the environment? Now we have the opportunity to look at a very rich database that has been generated over a 12-year period. And what that database tells you is that this technology is as safe as conventional technology, or sometimes safer. So therefore, the question that we must ask now, what is the risk in not using this technology? And it is clear from the evidence that has been generated that if, in fact, you do not use this technology, you will not be able to provide for a secure world tomorrow in terms of food. The price of food will increase. The significant benefits in terms of the environment will be denied society. And I think that today we look at a world in the 25 countries that are using this technology represent more than half of the world's population. Indeed, if you look at the adoption of the technology, there are 25 countries. Another 30 countries import biotech crops for a total of 55 countries. If you take the population of these 55 countries, it is 75% of the world population. So already today, 75% of the world population is benefiting from these crops. The potential for the future, as we see more crops, more traits, is enormous.